everybody. Welcome today for We Didn't Turn Out Okay. I'm here with Kristin McGee. Kristin was the creator or founder of Peloton Yoga and has been doing yoga fitness for 30 years, right? Anything else you want to add for listeners that you feel, is relevant to who you are besides, of course, a mom?
Yes, I first discovered yoga when I moved here from Idaho. I went to NYU acting school, and I discovered yoga in my acting classes and certified to teach to support my acting career. And it just became my career because everything kept pushing me in that direction. I loved it so much. I was passionate about not only yoga, but then I got my Pilates certification and my strength training certification and dived into meditation and all of these other mind-body modalities. And I'm a mother of 3 boys, single mom. I think that's it.
And how old are they?
Timothy is 11 and Robert and William are almost 8-year-old twins. Their birthday's December 17th.
Wow. And saying wow because single mom to 3 and twins. Mm-hmm. Not easy. Also, I didn't know that about acting, so learned something new about you.
Isn't that fun? I did a guest spot on 30 Rock once, which was really fun.
That is so cool. But anyway, I feel like, have been friends through social media since I started, and being able, which was 7 years ago now when Tess was born, maybe how we connected, maybe because your twins were just a year ahead and algorithm or just like network on social. But seeing you do what you love while parenting 3 and then becoming a single mom has been really inspiring. Before we dive into some of the things that I know we talked a little bit about that we want to share, are there any things that you feel you could share with those listening that might be single moms for various reasons that has helped you just staying the course?
Yes, I think having consistent practice or something to rely on, finding those good habits in your life that keep you grounded during the process, before even, because it's very hard to make the initial call, especially if you're the one who initiated the divorce, but even however it happens, just in those really beginning stages, your whole life is starting to unravel. And then during the divorce process, which can be really complicated, sometimes people are lucky and they have more amicable situations, but regardless, there's always tension. And then post, it's like this 3-part journey, I feel like, and then rediscovering yourself. The one thing that I do find really on a positive note for any single parent is there is that rediscovery. You get to become a new person again without being defined by your partner. And it can be scary because it's unknown, but it's also such a wonderful way for you to start to dive into getting to know yourself again, and maybe even reigniting some of the passions that you gave up or you weren't doing when you were in your marriage, or finding ways to create that space for yourself even when you are juggling so many things and being there for your children. I think it's just, if you have a few, like my meditation practice and my fitness, my movement really kept me centered and anchored the entire time. So if you have something like that, or anything that keeps you, whether it's your art, your music, walking, running, your friends, if you can find a few things that keep you anchored.
Yeah. I was mentioning before how I did some events yesterday, and, it was all different topics, but it really all came back to similar things. And one of them was finding even those like micro moments for yourself and how important that is for your mental sanity, but also for modeling for your kids. One mom was like, I go into my closet and have a 1-minute dance party in the morning, or like a few minutes, and whatever it looks like. But I think it's so important for modeling purposes for your kids too. I was just going to ask you, despite you said the inevitable tension and kind of that 3-part journey, doing those things for yourself was probably such a good example you were setting for your kids, that despite, the changes and the unknown and all of what we're feeling, mommy's still taking time for herself, and how that will help them for a lifetime.
Yeah, they see me meditating and they know, oh, mom's going to do her second meditation. A lot of times I do my first one before they wake up, like 5:30, but I do 2 20-minute meditations a day. And the second one's usually mid-afternoon before I pick them up from school. But a lot of times if I miss it, I'll still do it once they're home. And it's cute. Sometimes I'll open my eyes and one of them will be sitting next to me, sitting there meditating alongside
oh my God,
me.
I love that.
Or I'll hear them, I'll hear like this little voice, like, Mom, someone will scream to me and his brother will be like, no, she's meditating, give her 5, it's so cute.
Right.
Like they get it and they understand.
They're like protecting that space for you.
Yes, it's really sweet.
Oh my God, I could like turn this into a whole question talk about meditating because I don't do that. We all have different forms of it. I guess
Yes.
I have my own forms, but just thinking about, I was just going to ask you, when you are meditating, is it that you don't respond for those 20 minutes and they know that it's because you're meditating, like the way your son said, or like it depends?
It depends. If there's something where they really need me, I
course.
will even just stop and go do what they need and then come back and get back into the meditation. Sometimes, especially if it's a morning, say I'm a little bit later and or one of them wakes up early, I'll run up, give them a hug and say, I'm going to finish my meditation. I think that the training I have, I loved because my meditation teacher reminded us all that there is no right or wrong. And it's okay if your mind gets lost in thought. It's okay if you change positions. I even remember asking him years ago when I was doing the training, well, what happens if my buzzer rings? He's like, well, you go and answer it.
Right.
Like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
But then you just come right back. And so it's this whole feeling of being a little nonchalant about it. So that helps you actually dive deeper into the meditation because you're not holding yourself to these high expectations.
Right, which can seem really impossible. And for me, it's probably why I haven't meditated in that form yet. I also think that my form of meditation all these years of working with kids has been in the moments of being with kids, in a professional setting where, my phone's nowhere in the room and I'm really like in the moment of what's going on with
Yes.
what's in front of me with children. Your mind is really in the moment. It's maybe not clear, like, which I feel meditating allows you to just not be thinking about anything, but really just thinking about something outside myself and focusing on something. I feel that's my form of meditating. But yeah, it could take any shape or form. But even in those moments, like no one's coming and interrupting, me. So I feel like I've been given that with what I do.
I love that. That's such a beautiful practice for mindfulness.
You're really focusing on exactly what they're doing without, kind of all the projections and stuff that we usually bring to kids' experiences, especially our own. On that note, let's talk a little bit about boundaries for our kids and how we help them set them.
Yes.
So we can start there. Do you want to kind of share the recent?
Yes. I have an 8-year-old, and he will be 8. And so not only do we have the holidays, but also their birthdays in December. So it's a challenging month because you always want everything to go so well,
Right.
and there's so many things going on. He has a good little friend who's just incredible, but also wants to spend a ton of time with him and wants a play date every single day after school. And because maybe this person's an only child, doesn't have as much stimulation going on at home, and I can totally understand. But my son is a lot like me, where he has such a hard time saying no. And there are days when he definitely wants to have a play date, but then there are days when he just wants to go home and relax, but he doesn't know how to say no, and he's very afraid to say no. And then he'll ask me to do it for him.
And you're like, wait,
and I kind of want to step in, but then there's a
this.
part of me that also feels like I always have this sense that I have to make up some excuse as opposed to just being able to say, no,
Totally.
we can't today. Or no,
Yeah.
not today, but or I always feel like I have to give a backup plan. No, but why? How about tomorrow?
Right.
And then tomorrow comes and it's a similar thing. Right. And so it's very hard. If you have advice to how to just be able to set a boundary and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
Because I do notice he has that similar guilty feeling,
Tendency.
or he hates to let people down.
Right. Yeah, there's a few things there. First of all, like if we zoom out a little bit, hearing you say, I can understand this child is an only child and maybe doesn't have as much stimulation. The fact that you're thinking about the other child's position, starting with that, did you say anything to your son about like, oh, she must really want a play date because she doesn't have siblings the way you do? Did you say anything of that nature?
Sometimes I do, and I don't know if that's okay or not. I do say, this person doesn't have as much going on. I mean, they probably have things going on
Right.
other than
You're not
like
like, oh,
after school activities and stuff. But because they don't have like a constant
sibling,
play date,
right.
he has a twin.
Oh my God.
So it's
like,
a double-edged sword for him because he not only has a constant play date, but someone his age.
Right.
And so I can see where he might need more space than his friend because
of course.
he has a constant play date, twin brother, and then an older brother. And so it's hard to just...
I think it's nice to point that out because
good.
also,
Okay.
you know, imagine if he was like, oh, she's asking for a play date again. You would, of course, pointed it out then.
Mm-hmm.
So just because he's like, Mom, I don't want to, doesn't mean like we ignore the empathetic nature that
Exactly.
I'm sure he's feeling anyway. So I think it's also like validating, like, yeah, it might feel hard for you to say no because you might know also not only does she really want to play with you, but she doesn't have, you know, the way you have your brother and stuff like that. So I think that's a good thing. But just, again, wanting to set boundaries around like the extent in which we like take on another's feelings, right? Like,
True.
So just being mindful of that. So I think it's good to an extent, and for us too, right? Like I think you and I shared a little bit about how instead of just being able to say no, we go a little bit further and kind of bury ourselves in the whole situation because we're probably thinking about the others. The reason why we can't just say I can't or he can't and that feels so uncomfortable for us is because we're thinking of their perspective. I think there's a way of maybe not feeling uncomfortable with it or having it fall flat without doing the whole justifying excuse or like offering an alternative, but something like we really wish we could and we can't today feels better than we can't.
Oh, that's true. We would love to, but we can't today.
Right.
And that's a very good thing to think about as well because I liked the one part of making my son feel very proud of the fact that this person does want to have a play date with you all the time. Like that's a good thing to point out.
Right.
Like, isn't
or
it great
it must
that
be
they
also
really
that she
like
really
you?
enjoys being with you,
You're
of course.
a really good friend, and that's amazing. And you're not a bad friend if you say no. You're still a really good friend, and this person's still going to want to play with you because I think part of my inability to say no to things is that I'm worried
you're like
that I might
closing
not.
the door. Oh my God, that is like my biggest fear.
Yes.
The most helpful thing when there's a narrative like this for us, but also when we observe a narrative of that nature with our kids is not having someone come and tell us, like I could say to you, that's not true, you're not closing the door, but that wouldn't necessarily resonate with you. You'd be like, okay, but helping you figure that out with like your own data in life, like I'm sure there's people you've said no to that you realize haven't just gone away, right? And helping you realize that that's not a reality. I don't know if that's your son's fear, but just also wrapping yourself into if he's asking you to say no, like saying to the other parent, you know, he really loves that Jane has asked him for a play date and often wishes that he could do that. Let's find a time. And then he'll know, you know, and anticipate that. Like even if it's in 2 weeks or a week, unless he's like, oh, I don't want to at all. Has that ever happened?
No, he does. But it's exciting. You're right. It's exciting in bits and pieces because then he knows, oh, this is going to be that time. We have that special get together and then he can prepare for it.
And she does too. So it's not this perpetual thing as opposed to the initial
and having
thing.
To disappoint them every day after
right.
school. At
and
least
deal
now
with it every day.
No, remember, it's Tuesdays that we do X, Y, and Z.
Helps both kids kind of let go of kind of what they're getting into, which is this like habit of her asking him.
I'm having to say no. And
right.
Yeah.
Or like leading her on, for lack of a better term.
True.
And then, you know, asking you to handle. And I think you can address that with him too. Like, how can we help you feel okay about telling her that you can't today?
Yes.
Instead of saying this is what you say, you know, he's 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helping him find what feels authentic to him but empowers him too. Like if you were to say, I'll help you, but let's figure out what would feel good for you to be able to say to her.
So
like
what
are you worried about? Yeah. Like, or maybe he's also worried. I'm worried she won't ask me again. I'm worried she's home alone and doesn't have like all the things. It also helps you get a glimpse into what his roadblock is. Yes. It might be similar to yours, but it might be different.
I love that, and understanding where he is coming from to help him. And then he can find his own voice.
Yeah.
And be able to start to vocalize for himself with anyone and in the future, because this will keep coming up time and time again.
Yes. oh my God, there's so much of that, of our reflex to when our kids come to us with a struggle, and like believing that like if we fix this time that we're helping them, but it's not necessarily setting them up for success for inevitable other times. Like even something with like an insecurity. I was talking last night about how, someone said their child came home with an insecurity, and the reflex is like, I have to help fix this insecurity, but what about the next one and the next one?
Yes.
So how do we fix the overall like mentality around not forming these insecurities because of like what other people are saying or doing? So as an example, boys used to tease me for being flat chested, and I would come home to my mom, and oh my God, the most loving mom you could ever ask for. We would then take my bathing suits to put pads in them, and like that's like how I lived until like suddenly I'm like, wait, I like love my body,
Yes.
later on in life. And like, how could that have been, what we worked through? Like her not telling me you should love your body, but how does that make you feel when they say that? And finding out that maybe it made me feel like I didn't understand why the size of my chest is, and like us figuring out that there's so many beautiful people with all different sizes, and like it just being an opportunity for this like bigger picture of like how we can build those internal voices for our kids. I know this is like segueing a little bit, but like let's go with it. Are there any times that you're dealing with like insecurities in your kids?
Oh, completely. But I love what you just explained, because then we are reframing it for them to not have to ever fit an agenda or a mold of what other people think is the right way or what should be. Instead, it's like, no, you have your own unique little being inside of you. And really, the more you lean into that, the better off you are in life, because you will shine, and everyone has their own little individual differences. And so it's a really great way, because one of my sons was, and it's funny because I used to think of this with girls. I went through this phase. I was a super perfectionist, and my older brother used to tease me and call me hairy because I would freak out if my hair wasn't perfect before I'd go to school. And my poor mom was never really like the ultimate French braider. She would try, but there'd be like bumps and ridges, and so I would get in these fights with her, and then it was just drama. But one of my sons was kind of getting obsessed with his hair, and I was like, God, I never thought a boy would be, like really into like keeps trying to like push it down and make it go long, and really into like I wonder if someone said something about his hair, like made him feel like it was sticking up or awkward, and I haven't dived into that
like
yet
where
to ask, but where is this insecurity coming from around his hair? He did not want to get a haircut. My mom came, and she's like, we've got to get these boys haircuts. And he wanted it to be like down in front of his eyes and like keep shaking, So it's interesting. I wonder.
Yeah, there's like a few things there. I mean, like I think also similar to us, we get used to a certain part of us, and knowing that if we're going to change that, it means getting used to a different thing. Like if he's used to shaking his hair that way and then gets it cut, it can feel like awkward, right?
That's true.
We, of course, are programmed to just like go in and fix things, right? Especially with our kids, because it's uncomfortable not to.
Yes.
And so thinking about that, like maybe the hair thing was just about, of course, the wanting everything in place is more, I think, what it looks like.
Yes.
But the shaking of the head thing reminded me it might just be like how good it feels and like what we're used to.
And not foreseeing, even coming back from my mom's angle of like, well, you have to get a haircut. Your hair's in your eyes. Maybe it could be like, oh, what can we do with your hair? Do you really like your hair like this and in your eyes? Maybe, I don't know. I guess you can't have a kid wearing a headband.
But a hairstylist might know something.
A hairstylist might figure it out.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this perfect like straight across bangs where you can
see. Or let's go and tell the hairstylist what feels comfortable to you.
Pick it out.
And you guys can talk about it.
Yes.
I feel like is so great also for your dynamic with your kid, or you, the bigger you, my dynamic with my kids, that when they come to me, it's not about mom will say to do this or that, but mom will have a conversation with me.
Yes.
And I think similar with the play date thing, like instead of, now maybe like, what do you think we should do?
I do like that idea to strategize together.
Think about if you were to say to your 8-year-old about whether it be the hair or you can think of another example, instead of, thinking you go in and fix, if you were to ask him, what's behind it, would he shut down or like push you away, or do you think it could open up a conversation?
I think it could open up a conversation.
Depending on what it is.
I think boys, and this is interesting, it's great to have this opportunity with my boys to help them learn to verbalize and communicate more. And I don't know if this is fair to say or if it's, being judgmental, but I feel like men in general tend to be less talkative or open up about things. So I guess this is a great opportunity for me to help my boys get better at that, like being able to express their emotions and
talk about emotions,
talk about things and have emotions. Like that's the one thing I always try and remind them, that it's fine to cry, it's great to cry, it's good to like my one son was crying at the end of The Wild Robot. And I think he got embarrassed for a second. And I was like, no, that's great. Keep expressing those emotions. Because, again, I feel like sometimes there's this stigma for men that they can't cry or
So when you say
emotions.
That's great, how did he respond?
We just hugged each other. And and I let him keep crying, which is cute.
That's amazing. First of all, my daughter cried yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's people listening right now that are like, oh, my God, I love that and want that too, but I do believe that there's a lot listening, and myself included, who know that if we were to kind of encourage our child's vulnerable moments, that we have some of those deeply feeling kids who would respond with like a pushing away reaction, which is why I'm so glad he embraced. For anyone listening, when you do have a kid who is ashamed of those vulnerable feelings, something that is really helpful in what we're talking about is talking through it, bringing up something about when I've seen a movie and have felt, taking kind of the focus off of them without making them feel like, this is a weak moment, know? It's a strong moment.
It is.
But
be able to
it's
open
hard to
that.
spoon feed that to a kid who doesn't want you to tell them that, and how to help them kind of discover that on their own. And another thing, when they're not in that moment, which I was going to say, especially for boys who don't, you could say till you're blue in the face to some boys or some kids that was a strong moment. And they'd be like, okay, Mom. But later on, maybe like before bed or something, when they're not as like charged in that moment, talking about if you saw your friend crying at the end of iRobot, like, what would you think? Would you think that they were stupid or weak, or helping them answer those questions that we want to spoon feed and like program their brain to believe, but we can't. So when they can kind of discover and answer that and make their own kind of like opinions about it, it's really powerful.
I like that, and asking them what they would think of someone else if they were. And most likely they'd be like, oh, they wouldn't judge them or think twice about it. They would. It's
really like an eye-opening perspective. We were talking a little bit before if we should get into screen time and things like that. I think the more that we help our kids plan and expect when they can use it, the less they'll be, having the intense like desire and want to use it all the time.
Exactly. Or get stuck on it for endless amounts of hours. Exactly.
And when we were talking about, again, the springboard, one of the things which is the routine board that I was talking about earlier, the more we can schedule the free time or play time, the more our kids will be open to the other times, right? They can rely on, I'll have that time.
Yes.
But if we don't schedule that, they're like, why am I moving forward with all these things? Like, when is me time?
Yes.
And I think for us too.
And it's nice to look at the board too and kind of map out, it's coming into the new year. I feel like you have that second round of sign-ups. Like we did our fall programming, we had our different activities. Now moving into January, it's kind of nice to map out and look at the activities and decide, do you want to have something after school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or do you want to, or every day, or do you want to just have your Tuesday? It gives them that opportunity to say, yes, I do want to do all these things, but do I want to do it at the expense of not having a free day?
So true.
And if you want to have that free day, great. And then it's kind of those hard decisions. What should we give up? But a lot of times it helps you keep from being overscheduled. You give them the choice.
Right.
They can decide, and if they really want to have something every day after school, that's fine too.
Right.
But at least you're mapping it out.
And they'll expect that. Yeah, you're so right. Like I sometimes pick up my older daughter especially now, and she'll be like, another activity. Yes. And she wants and loves all these activities. But this time I was like, do you want to do jewelry after school again, or do you want that to be an open day? Like, as opposed to me just deciding for her. Mm-hmm. If I were to say, these are all the activities and these are all the days you have, do you want any free days or do you not? Like, if she was part of that decision making, there would be less of that sort of pushback, yes. right? And I think this goes with screen time too. If you have planned ahead with your kid when they can use their device, whether it be TV, phone, or iPad, there's less of those battles. Yes. Like, we decided together. Do you think that's like feasible?
I love it. And I also do like what we've been noticing as well is what would bother me the most is if I had each one of them doing their own thing on their own device, where we have these like fun times together where they can all play a Mario Party together, or they're all watching like the same drawing video on YouTube and doing a drawing video.
I love that.
Because what worries me too is when they're in their own little world, it's so less.
So
because I used to have friends, or my brothers and I used to watch, TV together, but we were all doing it together.
Right. We didn't have these individual devices, which are like pulling us apart. Yes. And I think there's so much of that even when, you look at resources on guiding you with kids and screen time that say screen time is not all that bad, in moderation. But something that I, always try to remember is like when you're watching it with your kid, if it's something for younger kids like Bluey, like not using screen time as this opportunity to check out from each other, because then we're also modeling that for our kids.
Yeah.
If we're on our phone and our kids know this is time that we're not together, they'll also believe that about their own devices. I mean, it's hard with the phone, right? Like, you're not doing something together with your kid. All more reason to kind of like schedule that when you're around your kids. But I think when they're using a device to say, like, can I watch that with you? Or ask questions, or if you're watching TV to not take that time to be like, now I'm going to do my own thing. Of course, when we can, to be watching together. There's so many times where like I, take that as my cue to be doing my own thing, and my girls will be like, Mommy, come see this, or want to talk about it.
Same. My boys want me to be involved and play a Mario Kart game with them as much as I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing on this.
This was like so helpful to talk through, even from my perspective. I have 5 and 7-year-old, but thinking ahead to know that, I always think bigger kids, bigger problems, but you can really like utilize a lot of the same tools when you just realize that they're all humans and that it just changes shape, right? Like,
I don't think as much like bigger kids, bigger problems. I just think bigger kids, different problems.
Yeah.
Like, even when I first had my twins, I met another twin mother, and she was like, I think I asked her, does it ever get easier? Because just having newborn twins was so insane. She's like, it never gets easier, it just gets different. There's always going to be different hard things. But that always stuck with me. It's like, nope, it's never going to. And that's what's kind of fun and challenging about being a parent, and why we grow and learn so much.
Oh, yeah.
Is that we do have these challenges, but they're kind of fun and interesting. And if we stay curious about it and about our children, like you said, and let them be, like, zoom out, let them be their own little individuals, and then get curious about what it is that's affecting them. You meet them on their level.
Yeah, and you grow together. And learn together.
Yes.
Yeah.
They teach me more than I teach them,
Same.
I think.
Thank you, Kristin. Where can people find you?
I am Kristin McGee on Instagram, and KristinMcGee.com, and Kristin McGee on Substack. So I like to write weekly. Oftentimes I share different meditations.
Oh,
or
I need that.
Fitness advice. Like, every Monday I like to start the week with an affirmation and some sort of meditation to think about. So.
Oh, great. I need that. Yeah. So maybe that'll be how I start my meditation and building it into my routine. Thank you so much